Hi, this is Ardek from Carach Angren, and you're watching RichardMetalFan.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Richard Metal Fan Interviews. This is episode number 97. And today's guest, we're talking to Ardek. Ardek is the keyboardist for the band Carach Angren, a symphonic black metal band from the Netherlands. Today we're going to be talking to him about what got him into metal, as well as the history of Carach Angren, and much, much more. So without further ado, let's go talk to Ardek. So what's up, guys? I am here with Ardek from the almighty Carach Angren. How are you doing today, man?
Great, yeah. Just got in, and it's early here. I think yours as well, right? So
Yeah, it's like
just had coffee.
it's like 10 in the morning here. Here, I don't know what time it is over in
Here's 9.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, so you're sort of like it's still
Yeah,
nighttime and it's still there. All right. So basically this
yeah. It's
format
it's about the same.
Yeah. So basically this format is I want to do a quick rundown of your catalog as well as talk about like your journey as an artist from where you start to now. But before we go into that, I want to dive right back to the very beginning. I always ask all my guests this. What were the first bands that got you into metal? What made you want to start playing keyboards?
Oh, that was a whole journey. Like a friend of mine back in high school, he got me into hard rock metal, and it was like a Dutch band that I first listened to. It was like Sinister Footwear. They don't exist anymore. And but I followed the whole journey from like punk to a little bit more aggressive, and eventually into death metal, black metal. It was bands like Cradle of Filth, Marduk, Dark Funeral, all those things. And it was around the time that I started listening to them that I realized, hey, my main instrument actually has a place can have a place in metal. And I experimented with that. So yeah, here we are.
Good story. So were you in any bands before starting up Cardigan Grin, or was Cardiff Angren like you guys' first band? Because I believe you had another band. There was like another band called Voltage, which then of course like then Cardiff Angren formed from after that.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like I had a friend in high school, and we started like experimenting. Like back then, I played like drum computer on my keyboard, and he played guitar, and we made like small songs, and for years, like we had a band that was called Dark Mutation. Eventually, we had a complete lineup, and we did some shows, and it was pretty cool. And in those, early formative years, you know then you can do a lot of trial and error. Like some songs, when I would listen to them, they were horrible, and other things were pretty cool. But it was in that time that I developed my skills, and eventually that band stopped, and I moved to Voltage. It was a new band, and was with the guitar player that used to work with, also a great friend still, Rob, that used to work with Seragor. They were in a band before, and we got together, and then eventually Seragor was gonna do vocals in that band first, like as a like temporary, and but eventually we became a band, and then we started to hang out more, and like we realized, hey, we like this black metal stuff, and like so we started to practice sometimes here and there, and eventually Voltage stopped and we continued. Then my brother joined, and Carach Angren was born. So in those early years, it was like, people coming from different corners and different cities. And, I think a lot of times it happens like that. Yeah.
Right, and it's gonna be special because next year will be 20 years since the band first formed. How crazy is it that would you ever think that Cardiff Angren would still be around almost 20 years later?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I mean, it's crazy to think that it's 20 years because it makes me feel very old. No? But in a way, it's also nothing, but it feels like yesterday. And I mean, we've always been very proud from the beginning. Like we loved it so much, and we thought like we had something special. Although in the beginning, not a lot of people like believed in it. They were like, it's just another of those black metal things. But we just felt very strong about it. So the idea was always to just keep going with it. And I never really thought about how long it would be, or all these things you're not really focused on back then. So,
Yeah,
but I'm very grateful that we're still here
yeah.
and did all of this. So
Yeah, and then 2004, you dropped like the debut like demo called the Chase Vault Tragedy. Tell me about like that recording process because I know it's only like 12 minutes, but damn, it just sounds very raw sounding.
Well, like I said, we started like rehearsing in those years that we were still in the other band, and once it was intended as a project, and I thought it would be really cool to have like a small story and to immediately release something. I just had this urge to do something, not just wait. And you know, sometimes when you have a band with a big lineup, you have to have this style and that, and what we're gonna do, you know. And we were just like the three of us, and so I set up my computer. It was all very simple, and like we had a caravan from my brother, like where we rehearsed, and we just recorded it. And we had this story, the Chase Vault, which was really cool. Like we found out about, you know, this like on Barbados where they had these coffins, and every time they opened the vault, the coffins were moved, and those things really spoke to our imagination. And we did it like pretty fast, and we liked it. And so already then the storytelling idea was born. And for me, it really was like something to hold on to, not just like another song and then this song and what is it going to be. Because like if you have a story, it combines everything, like the artwork, the whole vibe, the idea, the music, the intro. And yeah, we liked that formula, and we kept doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course, in flash forward to 2005, you released like the second demo or EP, whatever you want to call it, Ethereal Veiled Existence. I think it's a lot more
Yeah.
of a step up from the Chase Fall Tragedy. Tell me about like the recording of that.
Yeah, it was again a home recording with a very simple mixer and a computer. And I mean, we learned a lot. Like my friend that played in Voltage, like Rob, he knew some things about recording, and you know, I would call him like how to do this. And so we set it up, and I think yeah, we just spent a couple of weeks, months on it, mixing, recording, you know, step by step, and it was all very easy going. And yeah, I liked it a lot. How we did it, I think it has very how do you say that? It's not very polished. It's very raw, but that was what it was back then. It was not like now where things are much easier to record. It was like always a lack of computer power, things dropping out, not working. But that was cool. That was the charm of it, you know. So that was a lot of fun. And again, like the storytelling element, we kept with it. We didn't really think much about it. It was just something that we liked. Like, yeah, it was a cool story. And Sarah Gore made these lyrics, and it followed. And he still made the artwork back then. So it was really like a cool thing to do, like a very intense hobby to work on all this and release it. Like we released like 100 copies or 200 copies. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was a really great time. Yeah.
Yeah, trying to get hands on that. I see it pop up on like eBay or Discogs for like a couple $100s. I need to get some like OG shit.
Yeah, I should have saved more
Yeah, yeah,
of
or
them.
yeah, it would be cool if I wish there was a way you could put it up on Spotify because it's still fucking great.
Yeah, maybe it's a great idea to do it. Yeah, like to because I like we did a re-recording, but yeah, I mean the old ones, they have a charm to it. You know, I'm like
Yeah,
it's kind of cool.
yeah, kind of like that old charm, but that you just can't like recreate. It's just there in the moment.
Exactly, I've come to re appreciate that. Yeah, yeah.
All right. So I think you toured pretty much through the Netherlands and stuff. But then, how did Season of Mist find you guys?
Well, like first an important step in between is that with the Ethereal Veiled Existence EP, we got via another band from the Netherlands, Ordo Draconis, in touch with Philip from our first label, Manning Media. And he really believed in us. He listened, and he was starting up his label. And we got in touch, and we wrote a lot of emails. Super nice guy. And he said, like, yeah, I wanna release your first debut album. And you know, like we were, you know, early 20s then, and so for us that was a dream come true to have a record label that believes in us and invests in us. And so that's how we got to record Lammendam. In 2007, we recorded it,
Yeah, yeah, and
and
I know,
yeah, a killer. Yeah.
yeah, I know that next year is also going to be the 15-year anniversary of this album. But kind of like two questions in one. Like, what was like the thought process making the debut full length album? And is there like a possibility we can get a celebration of this album somehow? Maybe throw in some deep cuts. That's on like a tour or something.
Maybe. Yeah, we are not so much into anniversaries usually. Like that's our problem. We just like yeah, we go on. But I mean, it's a cool idea, maybe. But yeah, I mean, we were just like trying to. Up until that point, we had the comfort of just doing everything on our own, and we made like three, four, five song like EPs, and that's pretty. It's not easy, but it's like it's not so much as an album. So then came the step like, okay, we have a couple of songs now. We need to write more. What are we gonna do? And Lamendam was the story of Sergor's hometown, and he had put parts of it in his earlier bands already, but he felt really great about it. So that was like the idea to put that into the debut album, and a lot of work went into it. Recording, getting everything ready. First time in the studio was really exciting with Patrick Damiani, who has stayed with us in all kinds of forms, producer, recording for years. But yeah, so it was like a logical step, but more work. Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of like how there's like the interlude, the little interludes. Like I know there's that intro called Het Spook van de Liefdschap. I probably
Play van
butchered.
Soft, yeah.
Yeah, I probably butchered that. And I also like Hex Melting Flesh. Almost feels like it's almost kind of like part one, part two, almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just like
Yeah, we
flows.
did great things with that in the studio. Like we recorded all those sounds, like you can hear the door creaking. It was like actually a door, and we recorded all the footsteps. And like the girlfriend of the label boss back then, she recorded the screams in Hex Melting Flesh. So it was a special time. We wanted to do like yeah, it was basically almost everything was analog. Everything was created bottom up from the ground. So we used a lot of studio time thanks to those guys to make all of this. It was really special. Yeah,
Yeah.
really fun.
And being as you of course now signed to a label, did you like do like some major touring like outside of the Netherlands, or was it still just local?
Back then, it was a lot of local, and I was always wondering how to do it. Like, how do you, we got opportunities, and but for us, it was still like, yeah, like a puzzle. How do you become a little bit of a bigger band? And but like slowly, you start to get contacts, and things grow one step at a time, and then you get more and more opportunities. And the first big tour we did was in 2010, supporting Dark Funeral. It was like 6 weeks
Nice.
throughout Europe, so that was a big step up for us. And that was also how we got closer to Season of Mist. They noticed us, and you know start to email back and forth, and then yeah, before you know it, you have a record deal with them, and you record the next one, and so forth. Yeah, it's always been very steady in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of my favorite songs from Lamadam is "The Carriage Wheel Murder." I just love how it's pretty much in English, and there's one part where it goes into Dutch, and then you just go back to English. I just love how
Yeah.
you all able to like switch languages like on the fly.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, we love to do that, like because the story enables you to do that, and then we thought it would be cool to put some Dutch, some French here and there. We had a lot of help with translation, and because with German we speak, all of us, and we can speak, and so it's pretty cool to do that, and to have a little of a surprise element here and there. Yeah.
All right. Moving on to the second album, Death Came Through a Phantom Ship. Usually with the debut album, you usually have like your entire life to write, and then there's a lot of like hype with the first album. Did you feel like pressure to follow up Madame going into Death Came Through a Phantom Ship?
Not really, because when we were recording Lamendam, I had a lot of spare time actually, because the thing is like my part is usually done before the actual drum recordings and stuff, because I make most of the compositions, and I prepare all the orchestra keyboards at home. So prior to the recording of Lamendam, I had like 5 weeks, like day and night, trying to get everything done. And then in the actual studio, when they were tracking drums and guitars, I had like holidays. So a lot of times I was just playing the keyboard and making up ideas. And already then I had some ideas for That Came Through a Phantom Ship. And the story also came naturally, and then we just got excited to just, oh, that's cool, and we're going to finish it. So it was very natural. And sometimes I'm thinking like, how did we do that so fast? Because sometimes now it takes a bit longer. But I think it's just the excitement because back then you were like, yeah, young. It sounds awful, but like
Yeah.
everything's new, like a studio and wow, and a label, and and so and that energy makes you come up with new ideas and creativity. So I
Yeah.
think that's how it happened. So not so much pressure now.
Yeah. And with this album, did you like start touring like in the US yet, or was that later on?
As later on, it was 2014 for the first time. Yeah,
Uh,
it was 4 years later. Yeah,
all
yeah.
right. And then next album is probably like my favorite album from you guys, Where the Corpses Sing Forever. I just love this album, and I know this year is also the 10-year anniversary of this album, which is crazy. I mean, I was like a senior in high
Oh yeah.
school when this came out. Tell me about like the making of this album. What was that like going from Death Came to a Phantom Ship to Where the Corpses Sing Forever?
Well, I remember like Sarah and I we were talking about war stories and all of that, and the idea to have more like individual stories. And so yeah, he started writing lyrics like, for example, "Lingering in an Imprint Haunting" and "Bitte töte mich." And yeah, musically, I just continued a little bit from Phantom Ship, and yeah, just a natural progression. So like ideas that came up, and I was very excited with some new sounds I had, like for the strings, and so I could really dive into that. And you hear a lot of that back, and yeah, "Lingering in an Imprint Haunting" with the staccato, spiccato strings, the haunting effect.
Yeah.
And then yeah, we had all these different songs, so I was like, damn, like we should have a way to combine them, and we did that pretty last minute, like also with some help of a friend. And yeah, it came up with that story of the seven hauntings and this soldier that has to endure them in an endless loop. And as always, I hope like people would read the lyrics, understand the story, and like the result was pretty cool. People really like the funerary dirge of a violinist. But when you make those songs, you don't really think a lot about them. Like I thought, oh, it's a cool song. It's pretty long. I hope people will go through it. But then it becomes a song that people really like, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, because I know you no like most of your stuff are concept albums. Like I know no Death Came Through a Phantom Ship was mostly about like the Flying Dutchman, and of course like this album talks about like the Vietnam
Yeah.
War. So I'm guessing there's also I guess a lot of like research that also goes along with making these concepts.
Yeah, definitely. And also, when we have the lyrics, I usually have someone look over them, like objectively, like not just for language errors, but also like, you wrote here that in 1936 this happened, but then in this song it doesn't match up. So yeah, we take that very seriously. And for example, on the last album, I did a lot of research, like reading books. I went to museums for Frankenstein about Conrad Dippel, and personally, that's a lot of fun for me because then I learn something, and that yeah, I need that to get creative. If I don't have that, I'm like, yeah, okay, song, yeah, whatever, but I need something compelling to get going, and yeah, so it has been part of us always.
Yeah, and one of my favorite, probably like my favorite Carach Angren song of all time is the song "Bitit Tutit Mick." I'm always curious about like the like what's that song about? I know it's like the most cliche interview question, like what's this song meaning and all this stuff, but I'm just curious, what's that whole song about? As it's like my all-time favorite Carach Angren song.
Yeah, it's about a soldier that wants to kill himself, but every time he's stopped. So, like the German expressions, like "please kill me," and the music for it was like I wanted, we wanted like this song to be very aggressive and energetic. So, the opening riff immediately, it's a bit like the Carriage Wheel Murder. I remember I was thinking about that song back then, like because the Carriage Wheel Murder was just like 3.5 minutes, like hits, or 4 minutes, I don't remember. And this one wanted the same idea, and so it's a very energetic and very fast song, crazy drumming, and the passages in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then moving on to "This Is No Fairy Tale." Like I love this album, and funny enough, this is actually I believe the first time I ever heard of Carl Concrete. I used to have a friend that listens to you guys that guys, and that pretty much what got me to check them out. And I remember first seeing you guys back in like 2016 at like the Masquerade in Atlanta, where you did the tour with Rotting Christ and Necronomicon. I remember Marduk was supposed to be on the bill, but they dropped off. Tell me about like the whole touring
Mhm.
cycle for this album.
Yeah, cool, cool.
Yeah, because I just think that's album. Was that like going from this to this? I mean, I don't know. It's hard to describe it.
Well, it was that album was very how do you say it, complex, and also in writing the story that Sergo came up with. It's like a modern Hansel and Gretel take, domestic violence, and some of these topics were like, oh, they're difficult and like very intense, and like finding a right way to do it. But there are some really cool moments in there with the clown, and also musically, I really went into more complex arrangements in this album. So it was kind of a deepening of what we could do, and because the more albums you make, and for us it was also like every album people seem to like, so you also I get a bit nervous, like, okay, what's going to be the next one, like how do we continue this, and you don't want to repeat yourself, but you also want to come up with something fresh. So I start to feel pressure, not super much, but you think like, yeah, this album was really good, what will people think of this, that's in the back of your mind. And at the
Yeah,
same time, you don't have to give a fuck.
yeah,
And you just have to do your thing, because that's what led to the first one, like, so it's like this paradox in a way.
yeah, yeah. It's
But
like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like if you have like a thing that you stick with, people think that you're repetitive, and if you experiment too much, people say you're inconsistent. But at the end of the day, you just gotta follow what your guts tell you.
exactly, that's the thing. And that becomes more of a challenge, because people start to this is the funny thing. In the beginning, no one cared. Like, it's just what I told you, like, just another black metal band, whatever. Like, people even told us, like, why are you doing this? It doesn't work. This is over. I remember that. And but the more successful it becomes, people start, you should do this. Or there's also a mistake. Sometimes I show things to people and they're like, I think you should change that. And I'm like, do you really think that? But mostly it's that people just want to have an opinion. And I understand that, because, but so now we are very careful about it. To just follow our heart and gut feeling, the same gut feeling that we had back before everything started, because that's the only thing you can really rely on. And if people don't like it at some point, that's it. Yeah, it's also not bad. I mean, it's what it is, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And then moving on to Dance and Laugh Amongst the Rot, and I just think it's a love album, and I just a great album. I just love how it does the concept about like the ghosts and stuff. Like I think you pretty much set apart from like other black metal bands, like because most black metal bands talk about like Satan and hell, and but I love how you talk about like ghost stories and
Yeah.
all this other shit. Like it's just great. I just think you pretty much are a standout in like the black metal scene in general.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's what inspires us to keep going and make these albums. So, and in that one particular, a lot of individual stories, try to combine them again and have an overall flow. But and that one, for example, Charles Francis Coughlin is very special to me. It's a really cool story. When you read it, you immediately think, "Oh, what a great story!" And it actually happened, or like it's a myth and a legend. And then it's also forces you to come up with something decent for it. Just like, not just like blast here, but like, I'm like, this guy deserves a great song, and it's like you try to honor that. Yeah.
Yeah, and and I've of course I've seen Carach Angren now 3 times. Like I think your live show is just equally as great as on the CD because I know, no, do you almost like portray almost like characters when you play live?
Thank you. Yeah, especially Sergor, he can move from one character to the other, and he's crazy in that sense. He's an absolute astonishing frontman, musician. Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing to note is like about the fans, like of course me being a fan, I just think you guys have a lot of respect for the fans. Like I remember seeing you guys on this album cycle you played with Morris Principium Est and Wolfheart, and I love how like after the show, like you pretty much wait about a few minutes and you still had like your all you all had like your makeup and shit on, and you just came out into the crowd and just hung with fans and took pictures and signed stuff, which I think I have a lot of respect for bands that do that. Any band that does that is actually a band worth meeting in my eyes.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we really are grateful for all the fans and support because that makes it possible to even go on a tour. And people sometimes they tell me like, "Oh, we drove 4 hours," and I'm like, "Pooh, that's more than we drove with the bus today." I mean, yeah, you have to. I mean, I'm not taking that for granted at all. And everyone that comes to the show pays a ticket, buys a T-shirt. I mean, that's really great, and that keeps it going. And I hear great stories of people that they say, oh, "I listened to your album and it helped me going through this or that." I mean, that's great, and I have the same experiences with art. Sometimes I watch a movie when I have a rough time, or I listen to an album. That's the way it should be. Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course your latest album, Frankenstein Stratomontanus. I've been practicing pronouncing that before this interview. It's a great album, by the way.
Awesome.
Wait, and I know
Thank
being
you.
it is 2 years now. Now, do you have like an overall like conclusion about the whole cycle?
Yeah, very, very satisfied with it. Like this album was for me a lot of work in a positive way, but I think it's the one that we put the most effort in. If I look, it was like almost full time writing, researching, because I remember like I wanted to be really special. I also wanted to do some new things because the thing I was talking about earlier, like to not become repetitive and to have a great story and try some new ideas sound wise. And we were very careful about that. And like, should we do that? Because I don't want to ruin it. Like with some of the electronic sounds and the industrial sounds, and I experimented first a little bit with that solo, like to play it easy and safe. And then like we had the title track Frankenstein, and I remember I sent it to Serago and said, maybe we can do this, maybe not. What do you think? And first he said, that's not really Carach Angren. And then he said, like, I'm gonna try something anyway. And he came with these lyrics and the chorus, the vocals. And I was like, man, this is it. I loved it so much. And it's actually not really typical what we do because it's a very short song. It's almost like chorus verse. But we both of us we loved it so much. We're like, yeah, everything is in there that we want to be in there. So that song really pulled us into the album and into the story. And the response has been overwhelming. I think it's always cliche, but it has been the most successful album. And yeah, it's very dear to me personally. Like because sometimes people are like, "Oh, when is the next album?" But I'm still sometimes, partly in this album because I lived with this album for 2018, 19, and then the whole preparation for the press, and then of course COVID hit. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's very dear to me. I'm very happy with it. Yeah,
yeah.
still.
And being as it has been 2.5 years since Frankenstein Stratomontanus, have you all started working on the next Carach Angren album?
Yeah. I think musically, we have like 6 songs right now. I'm actually these weeks I'm trying to get an overview how far we are, but it took some time, and partly is because what I said, like I was still very much into Frankenstein, and like, and then always comes the blank page. I fear like, oh, what's gonna be next? Sometimes a dreadful feeling, but meanwhile, like especially the last weeks, like Sarah and I have worked on a song that's like really killer. Like we're happy as little kids about it. He came up with some lyrics on that, and so now we have the new Frankenstein to pull us into the new album. But I mean, it's gonna take at least, I think, next year to finish it because we want it to be good and we don't want to rush it. Like we could finish it very quick, but then, yeah, I'm afraid that it will be like a 7 or an 8. I don't want that. I want it to be spectacular again. And
Right.
sometimes the bar is very high. Yeah.
Right, and got a couple more things to wrap things up because I'm always curious about like the Netherlands because I funny enough I have where I work at their company is originally based in the Netherlands, but they also have also a location that's like 35 minutes north of where I am at in Georgia in the U.S. But I'm always curious, like there's so many great bands like
Oh,
Carach Angren, Within Temptation, Epica, Revamp, so many great bands. So what was like the metal scene in the Netherlands for you guys? Did you ever was there like a big scene over there?
Yeah, I mean, especially when we started and the late 90s, early 2000s, there were a lot of these places where you could play shows, like small youth clubs. And there were a lot of smaller like bands, like there were like sometimes 5, 6, 7 black metal bands, even more. And that scene was pretty cool back then. Unfortunately, over the years, a lot of these centers closed down because of cutbacks, and I think also people went more online, and so but we were lucky to be in that era because it was very inspiring. And I remember like every band would have its own website and guest book and things like that. But yeah, and now I moved to Costa Rica, so since 2 years.
Oh,
But and actually, the funny thing is that here is actually also a black metal scene. I came into contact like with some people. Like I'm working with a drummer here now, a great guy, and there's actually like some pretty cool local bands here. I went to a show and it was pretty good quality, so I was surprised by that. Like, yeah.
oh wow. And pretty much, and the final thing I want to wrap up is what's next for Carach Angren? I know you got that tour coming up with Rotting Christ. I'm looking forward to that. I'm seeing you all in Atlanta. Is just anything else you want to say to just like close the thing out?
Well, like what I said, like we live in challenging times with everything that's happening in the world. So for musicians to go out, it's an extra challenge. And I think that's a good thing to say, and that people realize that. I think people realize that. So we're very grateful that we can actually go out and do this tour, and we wanted to do it. And I think it's a great tour with our brothers in Rod in Christ. And like I said, we are slowly, getting to this next album, and we're really excited about the music so far. But it will take some time. But yeah, stay tuned. I think that's going to be the next thing we're really focused on. So new music, definitely.
Huh, awesome. So everybody, Ardek from Carach Angren. We'll see you next time.